Next. Okay, so just a brief who I am. I'm a wife, a mom, a daughter. I'm a granddaughter. My grandmother is 106 years old. She celebrated her 106th birthday in February the 12th of this year. So I always like to say that I'm a nana of 7. As Crystal said, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I'm an author, a publisher, and I received my bachelor's degree in business administration and a master's in entrepreneurial studies from Langston. So just wanted to let you know who I am, just to give you some credibility for what I'm saying about records. And I'm sure you'll find some more information as well. We're going to hit a few of those important documents that you need to track and keep record of. Next slide, please. Next. Okay, so welcome to Personal and Professional Growth. Let's reset. So this is a time, if some of the documents you don't have, take the time to gather them and put them in a place, a location that you can easily put your hands on and get to them. And I just want to say thank you to Crystal and the WOW organization for continuously supporting women and just people in general. The activities and the workshops that you do are so vital and important. And I just thank you, Crystal, and everyone that's on the video today. So where do you start? You start by, again, assessing where you are. Some information you may have already tossed. It may be too late. If it's on the list, it's something you might want to get your hands on. It's never too late to go get that information. So sometimes you can get it from other sources, but it's definitely good if you don't already have these things to try to track down a copy and keep for your records. Next slide. So personal information, such as, next slide. Okay. Personal information such as birth certificates for yourself, for your children. Now with children, when they get older, they do want those birth certificates. But me as a mom, I usually try to keep a copy of my grown children's birth certificate and Social Security cards because they do lose them. And when they needed them 2 days ago, mom has a copy. So those, you should keep those for everyone in your household, yourself, your spouse, your children. Diplomas and certificates. They also help with keeping track of when you fill out applications for state applications, for licenses, if you have to do depositions. A lot of this information, it's requested often. So to know where it is, to have it in a secure place, you can always go back and easily put your hands on. That's the best thing that you can do for keeping yourself organized and for those things to happen smoothly. Licenses, when you're applying for professional licenses, sometimes they want backgrounds, of course, employment information. They want that information. So keeping that, passports, keeping your old passports in a location, not just that you would need the information. Sometimes you're asked on different applications, maybe to renew when you had a previous passport. So keeping those, and then to help kind of curb fraud, you don't want to just toss your passport, make sure you hang on to it. Wills and living trusts are important to keep in a place, a secure place that you know where you can put your hands on it. Wills, living trusts, divorce decrees is one that I've omitted, but it's important to keep. I recently gave a deposition, and in that deposition, they asked about that. I was like, I can't remember even when it was. I remember the year, but I just didn't remember the specifics. So keeping all important documents for probably those indefinitely, but there are some that you can get rid of after a few, which are taxes. We'll talk about that a little bit more. List of medications and surgeries. That is so important now with different medications and testing and all that's going on, lawsuits that come back up. I received a couple of questionnaires about medication that I had taken that were discontinued that caused other health problems. And in filling out the application in regard to it, they wanted to know specifics about who prescribed it, when you were prescribed. So keeping that information is really good. You may or may not use it. Of course, surgeries, any procedures that you have in the future, they kind of want an idea of what you've already had. So keeping that information is really good for you. Receipts of purchases, we'll talk about that a little bit more, but of course, any major purchases that you make, you want to make sure you keep those receipts probably indefinitely. Especially if it's something that you're going to have for years to come. And we'll talk about that a little more. Insurance policies and claims, you want to make sure that you keep that information as well. Next slide. Next, okay. So taxes is a big one, and we're going to talk about that now. So for taxes, you want to keep records for at least 3 years. I keep them for up to 7. Just to cover myself, because a lot of my stuff pertains to my business. And because I file as an LLC or S Corp, I also need some of that documentation for my business. So I usually keep all of my records for 7 years. My family hates it because in my home office, I have a lot of totes and boxes of papers, and they're like, why don't you just throw it away? But for my protection and their protection and my assets, I keep records of those things. So when you file your tax returns, make sure you have a copy. Keep a signed copy. So once you sign it, then make your copies. Keep all the worksheets that go along with that particular filing, any forms or like your W-2s, medical bills, college or interest on student loans, anything that you claimed on that tax return, make sure you keep it. Also keep a copy of it with that filing. So you want to make sure that you keep bank statements and receipts, canceled checks, proof of payments, anything pertaining to that tax year, make sure that you keep record of it for at least 3 years. Again, if you're in business, you want to keep those longer, at least 7 years. Next slide. Next. Okay, so there are some situations where if you don't have a business, you should just keep your tax returns or things longer than 7 years, which is if you do file taxes and you have to pay, make certain that you keep that record for at least 7 years. Any income where you have a loss or you get a big return, make sure you keep those. Again, I would suggest 7 years. You're kind of in the clear if you ever get audited, if you have records for 7 years, especially if your documentation proves something different than what they're looking for. If someone else reported that they paid you $35,000, but your records indicate that you only made $18,000, you will want to make sure that you had that documentation to show this is what I received and this is what I made. So, and if you don't know, also keeping good records of your tax information kind of helps with fraud, it protects you from fraud, making certain that you have those records. There are people that use your W-2s, they get copies of them somehow, they make up copies. So you having your proof protects you and your family and your assets. Next slide. So we talked about briefly receipts of purchases when you do your mortgage paperwork, lease agreements, any improvements that you make on your home, get receipts and make sure you keep copy and records of it. It's also good to kind of keep a log if you can. You may not, but just on a log, a blank piece of paper. I like to use binders as well. So some information, I'll put a year on the binder and I'll list certain things, what's in that binder. If I did something, if we purchased a stove or a refrigerator, attaching the warranties, the sales slip to those things so that you know when and what you purchased, if the warranty is still good. So major appliances, investment documents such as stocks and bonds. If you buy those, you make investments, make sure you keep that paperwork for at least seven years. If you're still in the house, keep the paperwork for the mortgage as long as you own the house. If it's a rental property, you definitely want to make sure that you're keeping that the entire time that you own the property, and maybe a few years past that. Next slide. So if you're in doubt, definitely keep it. It's better to keep it and just have it than to discard it and need it down the line. So next slide. So just in case there are people on here that do have businesses, and I talked just a little bit while we were talking, but you want to make sure if you do have businesses that you keep all of your businesses tax returns, and you want to keep them separate. But I also make a copy for my home to take home and keep in my home files. But employment tax records, business assets, keeping the ledgers from your bank records, human resources files. If you are in business, you really should dive deeper into that, because there are certain records that you'll want to keep for specific times, but 7 years is safe for all of it. But if you want to know if your files get too cluttered, it becomes too much, there are some files that you only have to keep for a year, some 5 years. But again, it's always safe for 7 years if you can do 7 years. Keeping canceled checks and credit card statements are always good. So, any questions? Next slide. Comments, concerns? Crystal, you're muted.
When you think of keeping records and growing, how can keeping records help you to grow? Like what is the process, or how does that help you?
That is a good question. Some of the records, for instance, for my business that I kept was our invoicing and inventory, the work that we did. And I use that to compile my bid for my next contract with the city of Tulsa specifically. And that really helped me that I had those records, because it was amazing to see in hindsight what I did. And so how that looked, if I hadn't had those records, I would have just been guessing, okay, we did this 10 times, or we did this service 20 times. But having that record, I was able to see what we actually did, and it helped me to structure my new bid a lot better. And it's been amazing. So go ahead.
That's exactly what I wanted to hear, because a lot of people, they're not able to understand the importance of keeping your records. And anytime that you grow, you have to have a chart of growth. When you have a baby, when it's a new baby, they literally have you when you go into the doctor, they chart the growth of your baby. And they tell you, is your baby below percentile or above percentile, depending on where their height, their weight, their development is. So keeping records is an awesome way to know if you've personally or professionally grown. I know you talked a lot about the business aspect of it, but even keeping records of certificates that things that you've accomplished, and just being great at, documenting that stuff. And what I've learned is when you want to do a bio, it's great to go back through your records and look at what you've accomplished throughout 3, 7, 10, 21 years. Great people keep great notes. So thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. Let me pull it back on. Okay, let me go out here and see if our lovely people have any questions. So we're back on Facebook. If the people of Facebook or on YouTube could chime in and tell us, do you have any questions about personal growth when it relates to keeping records and sharing your experiences about keeping your records? Any questions out there? I'm watching the YouTube live to see for the questions. I'll give it like one more minute. Well, I don't see any questions as of right now, but I do have Tanisha said, great info, thank you. So um, Rose said, thank you. Angela, I want to thank you for taking time out today, being that you had a major incident last week and you are here live today. That takes a lot. And I want to give you just a wonderful thanks for coming today and sharing with the WOW people. And if you want to find Miss Angela, could you tell them how they can find you or where your different businesses are that they can be able to follow up with you?
Yes, so I'm Angela K. Chambers, Angela Pfeiffer Chambers on Facebook. My email is angelakchambers@yahoo.com. I'm also the owner of Last Stop Lawn Maintenance and Landscaping Inc. We're on Facebook. Also P&J Publishing. We're on Facebook, so you can find me on there as well.
All right. Well, if you could post that in our YouTube chat so people can find you after this YouTube is over with, that would be awesome. And I want to thank you again for coming today and sharing with us, keeping good records. So thank you once again.
Thank you.
I'm going to pull up our slide so we can get to the next. Whoops. So you all know what time it is. It is now time, and I don't know why I'm having problems with so this is our networking time. It's all about networking right now. Okay, so right now, what I would like for you to do is to place your Facebook or your LinkedIn profile links in the comments of the YouTube. And this is everybody, everyone that's listening, tuning in right now. If you could put your Facebook link to your page, to your personal, to your LinkedIn, whatever you want people to know you by, we want you to put it in the comments of the YouTube. Now, there is a door prize tied to this. After you do that, I would like for you to go to another person's page. And I'd like for you to like it if there's a page, comment on it if it is a personal, or message them and if it is their actual personal page. And we will, once you do that, you need to put in the comments the name of the person that liked or commented, or that the person that you commented or liked their page. So I'm going to put mine in there as well, so you guys can follow my Facebook WOW if you haven't already. And if you haven't, why haven't you on Facebook liked our WOW organization page? Like it, that's what keeps us going. So if you could, that would be amazing. Oh, I think there's questions. Hold on, let me go back. Angela, I think you have questions. So while we're doing that, because it's going to take people a while to get their links into YouTube, okay. There is a question. What about if you have an IRA, but you don't get receipt for what you request? Good question. Angela, can you answer that?
Could you repeat that question, Crystal?
What if you have an IRA, but you don't get receipt for what you request?
So I'm not sure what you're requesting. You should have a receipt. You should receive a form in the mail, which will, at the end of the year, I believe it's a 1098. I could be wrong.
I don't think they send those out every year. So that is a very good question, because a lot of people don't know how much they have in their IRA. That's a very, very good.
If you are contributing every year, you should get a statement, because you have to report, you should be reporting that interest on your taxes. But contact that bank. I always tell everyone, when you call, it's not necessarily on record, but when you write and you put it in writing, you send it certified mail, you usually get a reply or response, because then it's really asked at that time. So if you are calling and you're not receiving that information in the mail, you should definitely every year, but I want to look quarterly. Send a letter asking them for your statement for your IRA account. You should know that. Actually, you should keep track of it more often than once a year as well, due to the fraud that
could happen.
Yeah.
So I know for instance, Fidelity, because that's a very big place that people go for their IRAs and different financial institutions, but you can actually just call the 1-800 number. And when you call them, you can request a statement, you can request documentation, transactions, history, and they will email that to you or they will mail that to you. So that is one way that you can get your IRA statement. Let me see if there's.
I just want to stress that don't wait until the end of the year. You should actually be looking at that more often than not. So if they have, I think Fidelity, they may have accounts that you can sign in online to look to see. And I want to say that because I have several bank accounts. So some of them I wasn't looking in on a regular basis because I'd only do a few transactions out of that particular account a month. So I had a charge that showed up that I wasn't aware what it was. They were smaller. And then one month it was a large one. And so it really got my attention. And the bank told me, they gave me my money back, but they told me that it's my responsibility to check those accounts on a regular basis. And so although some banks are covering you, some of them are hesitant and may not cover you. I think there's a time window that they have established. I know this was at Arvis Bank, and they told me there was a specific time that you have to dispute charges that are on your statement. So make sure you're looking at them more. And I was looking at it